Welcome to Regal Roundtable, the talk show that discusses hot topics and current events from a male perspective. I'm your host, Todd A. Smith, and today on the panel I have Jay Barnett to my left joining me, radio personality, actor, former football player, and to my immediate right we have local business student, Malik Wright. Today we're talking about the controversial issue of hazing and what can be done to prevent it. In 2011, Robert Champion, the drum major at Florida A&M University, was killed as a result of hazing. In 2009, Donnie Wade II was killed at Prairie View A&M University while joining Phi Beta Sigma fraternity. I want to ask Jay this first question. What in your mind do you consider hazing, and when does hazing go too far in your mind?
I guess being a former college football player and former professional football player, I think what I would consider hazing is almost like, I guess the word chastising or initiation, bringing somebody like a freshman onto the team. And most definitely, I think when you're involved in things that are causing harm to someone physically as well as mentally, because really hazing really affects the mind really. So it's a very tough situation. I know I was hazed in college, nothing major. They woke us up in the middle of the night and told us that the coaches was having a meeting. It's like 12 a.m. and you're a freshman and you just want to make sure you're in line with everything that's going on. So we walk down and it's about 12 freshmen and they line us up outside. They make us take our clothes off and we stand out there in boxer shorts and some guys are naked, man. So it's they start pouring flour on us. They're dumping flowers on the guys that come and do cracking eggs, and then here come a couple other guys, watering us down, and I mean, they're having their way with us. A couple guys quit that night, so it really, to me, I didn't see anything wrong with it. It didn't harm anybody. You probably got some flour or something in your ear, but I think if it would involve something for us, guys having to do some things to the extreme, holding their breath under the water for a second, things like that.
You talked about a lot of the rituals, and I know you played in the NFL for a minute with the Green Bay Packers. And you say it can go too far, the physical stuff like that, but is it all fun? Is it all seen as fun and games by most athletes and stuff like that, or you said some guys quit? I mean, have you seen it go too far as far as football?
Yeah. For most of the veterans, I mean, I think it's like when you're a freshman and it happened to you, your frame of mind is next year, when the next freshmen come in, I gotta get them back, or so you have guys that try to come up with things that are more extreme than what they had the following year. But I think veterans really take it serious. So
I want to go to Malik because you brought up that good point of, okay, it happens as a freshman and stuff like that, so I'm gonna do it to the next guy. How can we stop that culture? If it was done to me, that means I need to do it to you. You hear parents say that about corporal punishment. I'm not saying that I'm against that, but it was done to me. This is how my father raised me, so I'm gonna do it to them. How can we break that culture of when hazing goes too far, stopping it even though it happened to you?
Well, I think the first thing we have to do is be informed. From individuals who experience it in a bad way, didn't enjoy the experience, they should be able to speak out about that experience without being ostracized. So I think the first key is education. Those who went through it should have an opportunity to speak about those experiences without being ostracized or looked at as being disloyal to the team and being unpatriotic. I think we have to tear down those barriers that prevent people from coming forward. And if we do that, then we'll be more sympathetic to the other person's feelings. Instead of just making this a group thing, which is a team thing, but let's start listening to the individual.
You brought up a good point about that ostracism and stuff like that. And I know, Jay, you could talk about this, and some guys know about it from a fraternity standpoint, that ostracism and having a culture of machismo and not wanting to seem weak. What type of role does that play in guys not wanting to break that cycle of hazing?
Well, it's kind of what you said, a lot of guys have a mind frame of, being unpatriotic or disloyal. So it's kind of like, if you don't follow through with it, I'm not part of the team, or you feel almost, I'm a sellout. And I think, as he said, that, being informed is very important because, to break those barriers. And to be honest with you, that's one of the reasons, even though I'm wearing purple today, it's my university colors, But that was one of the reasons I didn't pledge.
Yeah.
Because you hear the stories, about the hazing, and and you hear the guys talking about how this happened and that happened, and and it's kind of it's been swept under the rug, for so long, and with these past deaths, of guys dying from hazing, man, I think it's something that we really should take seriously.
I'm glad you brought up the hazing point about the deaths, the untimely deaths of a couple of students. And I want to go to Malik with this next question. I've heard personally people compare fraternities because of the hazing to educated gangs. What would you tell somebody who kind of characterizes a fraternity as an educated gang because of the initiation process?
I mean, it really depends on the individuals who are part of that fraternity, their mentality. You can have a gang mentality, and by gang mentality, us against them. And if you have that mentality to where it's so extreme, to where the loyalty is extreme, and the sense of belonging is so extreme, then yes, it becomes a gang. And I think it's very important that when people get into these organizations, they understand it's just that, organizations, a fraternity, a brotherhood, a way to network with individuals, not a way to try to gang up against other fraternities. And it's that internal pressure that leads to that external conflict. Everyone's trying to outdo the other, which is okay, but when competition becomes dangerous, you have a problem.
I'm glad you brought up the point about belonging. I'm going to go to Jay with this next question. Do you think once somebody gets into college and they have the mindset of belonging for that long, it's too late to break that cycle? Because that's where a lot of it comes, where you put up with something like that, you want to belong. So is it too late by the time they get to college to kind of break that cycle of belonging?
I wouldn't say it's too late, but it's most definitely probably they're pretty gone, and I would say gone mentally, because I think if you don't have a sense of identity about who you are by the time you reach college, a lot of these fraternities and organizations, they look appealing to you, especially for most freshmen. And now you have some individuals that parents have pledged, and they know the history of the fraternity or sorority, so they know the real meaning, as Malik said, about networking and brotherhood and sisterhood. But if you don't have a sense of identity and you have that internal feeling of wanting to be validated and wanting to be accepted, you're willing to go to the extreme.
To add to that, by not having that, going back to the game, it becomes your game.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where it comes from.
And that's why people join gangs.
Exactly.
They didn't have the father, they didn't have that big brother, that uncle, and that role model, so they get that love from the wrong people. Okay, I'm glad we talked about those. Are some great topics. Let's take it to the streets of Houston and see what the people have to say about hazing.
Hi, I'm Crystal Taylor with Regal Roundtable, and we're speaking with Dr. Vera Hawkins today about hazing. Dr. Hawkins, as a parent, how would you handle if your child wanted to pledge your sorority or fraternity, but extreme forms of hazing were involved?
I would encourage them not to pledge. In fact, I am a member of a sorority, and I just would not condone it at all. First of all, I know as a member of a sorority that is not part of the agreement. When you're coming on board, scholarship is the #1 thing, and anything that's going to detract from that is not going to be conducive to true sororityhood or brotherhood, so don't do it.
Okay. As a mother, how would you balance letting your son be an independent man, deciding for himself whether to submit to hazing versus being an involved mother?
I would hope that a son or a nephew or any child that I would have the chance to influence would not allow him or herself to be abused in any shape, form, or fashion. Abuse is not love, no matter where it's coming from. And I did pledge during some old school days, and my sorority had some issues with hazing in the past, and it caused some suspension of chapters. It caused some people to be permanently removed from the chapter. But it also brought about changes in the pledging process, and the understanding that that kind of behavior is not to be condoned. It is not to be tolerated by those individuals who are going through a pledging process.
Okay. For what reasons would you encourage your child to pledge, and for what reasons would you discourage them from joining a Greek letter organization?
Well, I tell anybody that comes and talks to me about sorority or fraternity life that before you can be a soror, you need to know how to be a sister. And if you're not a good sister, daughter, friend, then you don't even need to think about trying to be a Greek. You need to learn what it really takes to be a good sister. Having compassion, having concern, genuine care. And once you've been able to master these things as a human being, then you take the next step, because it's all about enhancing who you already are. It's not going to make you that, okay? You've got to enhance yourself through the sorority or through the fraternity.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Hawkins.
You're welcome.
Back to Regal Roundtable.
Welcome back to Regal Roundtable. I want to direct this this next question to Jay. What will it take to end extreme forms of hazing on college campuses, in your opinion?
I would most definitely say what Malik said earlier, informing students the importance of the organization and the fraternity or the sorority that they are, planning on pledging, and just educating them on the purpose of it. And as they're educated, explain to them that if you're part of something that is asking you to do something that you're uncomfortable with, as far as hazing, let's try to be aware of that, because honestly, realistic, it still goes on in sports, so it's sort of hard to kind of pinpoint, if you can stop it or not. But I think you can most definitely slow it down and help, educate, students on, the purpose of what they're doing.
And Jay brought up a good point about knowing the history of the organizations and stuff like that. And I feel to believe that the fraternities, when they started, were hazing as bad as we are now and stuff like that. What do you think how do you think they got out of hand and stuff like that? You think it's abuse of power, or how did it get out of hand?
Yeah, I believe abuse of power is definitely one factor. People in that position of authority having a feeling want to feel like they're in control, and no regard for the person's feelings, no regard for the rules, no regards for the feelings or the rules that apply to a person's safety. And I think that's an abuse of power. And again, the abuse of power is compounded when the people are told, if you tell anyone, you're not going to, we're going to ostracize you, we're not going to associate you anymore, we're going to make it hard for you in your future, we're going to do this and do that. And it's that abuse of power that makes people afraid to come forward, and it keeps them on the hush hush.
And also to comment on what he's saying, I think a lot of times is that things become so attractive to us, and once we know there's a demand on something, the person who is in control basically, how bad do you want it? And how bad do you want it? So I mean, you think about the movies like School Days. Most of the black films, when they started displaying, fraternities and sororities, and I mean, it made, being a part of something attractive.
Right.
So when people found out, oh man, I want to be this, or I want to be this, or that, it's like, okay, this is what you want to become, this is what you're going to have to do.
Right.
And I think when it got out of hand is that, whoever the president was or whoever that leader was, saw really a situation where they could really manipulate it to where, okay, wow, we got a lot of young guys or young ladies coming in, and they want this. We're going to see how far we can push them. And once you push a person, to a certain degree, and nothing happens, you raise the bar again.
Yeah. And that's what it goes over it. But I mean, it's kind of like you said, it's like a supply and demand situation. It's kind of like the gas prices. The $4, how bad you need to have it. The summer's coming up. Or we can charge whatever we want, what they're going to do. You know what I mean? So, and that's where it comes in. But Malik, I want to go to you with this question. We talked about School Days, and I think about Spike Lee's character, Half Pint, and him being a virgin, and they didn't want to play him because he was a virgin. You know what I mean? A lot of women like that status symbol. They want that athlete in the pros, and when they get in the professional level and stuff, when they get out in the real world. But in college, it's being on a football team, being in a fraternity. So what role do you think trying to appeal to these women does it play when a guy wants to submit themselves to this hazing?
Yeah, that's the ultimate. I mean, I think a lot of the guys wanting to be a part of something is what the women gonna think.
Yeah.
And coming off tough and the machoism, and if you don't pass this, we're gonna tell them you weak and you ain't really no man. And yeah, a lot of that plays on what they think the women's opinion or perspective will be of that particular individual. That plays a big part. But I remember on School Days, if you remember, when that guy that was over the fraternity made, I think her name was Tisha Campbell, have sex with. And you have a lot of that too. A lot of women who also demean themselves just to be a part of something.
They're brainwashed.
So controlling, like, hey, this is the sister of the fraternity, and you got access to her. I think that's not talked about a lot. A lot of that goes on.
Is that
go ahead. Yeah, and you know what's funny, and I said I've been on Black College campus, and you know the university I went to is part of the A&M school system, so it was a predominantly white college, and you know white fraternities and sororities are totally different from blacks. And you know what I mean, you know their whole setup is called Rush. It's Rush Week. It's not pleasure. So it's more like a fun type of situation than more of a humiliating type deal where you know you got to walk around with a dress on or something like that, or you got to stand outside and you know hold 2 gallons of water, you know 1 gallon in each hand. So you know it's very different, and you know in our culture, you know fraternities and sororities have become a sense of validation. You know, and kind of, you know, what Malik said about even with the women, you know, the women want to be validated, you know, I'm the sisterhood of this brother, and, you know, vice versa. So,
all right. I'm glad you brought that up, Jay, about, you know, the difference between white fraternities and black fraternities and things of that nature. I want to go to Malik with this question. When is hazing acceptable? You talked about the fun aspect of wearing a dress, something that you can laugh at. When is it acceptable and when is it not?
It's acceptable when it doesn't dehumanize the individual. And when it dehumanizes that person, it becomes unacceptable. Absolutely. There's no gray area, there's no lukewarm approach to it. If it dehumanizes a person, if a person, even the wearing a dress, if that person really doesn't like that, this person feels dehumanized, it shouldn't be subjected to that. It's the dehumanizing factor that creates the problem.
I'm glad you brought that up with the dehumanization of people and stuff like that. That's going too far. Do you think, Jay, that fraternities, and specifically black fraternities, face too much criticism for that? Because I see a lot of times in the military, you push guys too far, and they want to seem macho, and they might go snap and kill 16 or however many it was in Afghanistan, and this, that, and other. So do you think we put too much blame on fraternities?
Oh yeah, and most definitely we're going to take, you know, a lot of the criticism because we're the minority. So whenever you're the minority, you're going to always be, I guess, under the microscope, and you know, looked at as everything you're going to be, everything that you're doing is going to be looked at as, you know, okay, if you guys are doing this, I mean, you think about it. That's been, you know, kind of like what you said, even in the Air Forces and other, you know, armed services and things. I mean, hazing is part of the process in most cases. You know what I mean? Even if you look at some of the movies, you know, where they got guys out there running in the rain non-stop. Don't stop until, you know, I'll tell you to stop. You know, that's hazing.
Yeah, it is.
You know, so, you know what I mean? And of course, you know, we're going to always take, you know, the, I guess we're the scapegoat. Because, you know, we are the minority, and I guess you know, all our information get brought out on TV and, you know, everything, so, and blown out of proportion. And so, you know, there's one deaf in one black fraternity now. Black fraternities are, you know, this and that.
And that's a very, very small minority. That's a small, very, very small, one out of how many we're actually trying to pledge that semester that you're around the world, especially in that organization and stuff. And how often does that happen? Very, very seldom. Not saying it's okay, but it happens very seldom, and it seems like we get more media coverage on the military things. I
mean, when you look at it, the dominant, you got to keep it in perspective with the dominant culture. Because we all following the suit. A lot of kids are following suit with the dominant culture, portraying the violence, the machoism, binge drinking. I mean, you go to UT's colleges, they take pride in that. Binge drinking, and you watch the television shows, and it glorifies it, it encourages it, and then they want to come back and say don't drive drunk, you know, because you encourage them. So it's a lot of hypocrisy mixed in there, and the kids are just going off what they feel they can get away with. But the dominant culture, a lot of times, silently and indirectly, sanctions certain behavior.
I'm gonna go to Jay with this next question. I know because you play football, and we got the bounty program going on with the Saints, and everybody really, you know, watching out for concussions, and you getting medical checks and stuff like that. You're training people to watch out for that. I'm not condoning any kind of physical hazing, but what type of training do you think that those big brothers or organizations need to go through so they can not take it totally to the extreme?
I think most definitely they need to go through mental training. because I mean it's like I said, it's more of a mental thing than it is physical. You know, when you look at hazing, I mean you want to deal with that person's mental intellect to really see, you know, okay, are they really built for this? You know, and you see it all the time, especially, you know, from college to pros, you know, okay, you was a great high school player, but let's see, are you built for college? And if you can go through this process, you know, then that let us know that, hey, you're built for it. But I think, you know, they should have a series of questions to what, you know, whoever that leader is, what they feel, what hazing is, because also that's going to call them to the forefront to really see where their mind frame is on that. And, you know, when I look at the bounty situation with the Saints, I mean, personally, you know, football is a physical game. Yeah. Like, I mean, you know that from the day you put on a helmet, from Little League all the way up until the pros. I mean, it's a dangerous game. Yeah. You have people with helmets on that are running full speed, you know, tackling, you know, hitting, running and catching. So, I mean, it's the violence of the game, but I don't think you can control, you know, the concussion. It's looked at now because there's more cases, and now technology is more advanced.
So I'm glad you talked about that. You know, it's a violent culture, period, not just football and hazing and stuff like that, but it's a violent culture overall in America. You know what I mean? So, Malik, what can be done on a government level to kind of prevent hazing from going further? I know a lot of politicians speak out against hazing, but what can the government do to really put a stop to this?
I mean, I guess it should be some definitions, a way to define what it is and what it's not. The good and bad, the part that's dehumanized and the part that's acceptable. I mean, it should be some type of code that, you know, if it's broken, that person would be, you know, breaking the law. I think right now it's such a general and I can't say, the definition is so vague that you don't really know what it is and what it's not. Some people say that's okay, others say it's not. So I think it needs to be a uniform code.
I'm gonna go to Jay with one more question before we go to a break. If you were victimized by hazing, how would you respond? We talked about the ostracism, but how would you personally respond? Going back to your Tarleton State days, go back to that mind frame of 2000 or 2004.
To be honest with you, man, you got to suck it up. Because, I mean, the scrutiny that you're going to have to deal with once you come out, that you've been hazed and that this and that happened to you. I mean, you know, I've seen it happen to guys that got to transfer.
Yeah, I was going to say that. You might as well transfer. It's over with for you. And I've seen girls, we talked about the girls and impressing the girls. I've seen girls turn on dudes, oh, he just a punk. You know what I mean? That's bad when a girl calls you. I don't want to say what the other words that I've heard, because I mean, this is a PG show, but that's bad when a girl is calling you those certain words that start with a certain letter and stuff like that. Yeah, it's hard. So I've seen it. I mean,
because, man, you know, our egos are fragile. And especially when you are on, you know, the athletic side. And I mean, whether it's football, basketball, just being an athlete, period. You know, once the word get out around campus, you know what I mean?
That's their snitch.
Yeah.
They say snitches get stitches and stuff like that. You might as well go
You know, you might as well go ahead and ask for those release papers.
Yeah. Panelists again, Mr. Jay Barnett for joining me, Mr. Malik Ingram for joining me on this hazing issue. I want to thank the wonderful people of Grooves of Houston for opening their doors for us. Visit them at 2300 Pierce Street or visit them online at HoustonGrooves.com. Visit RegalMag.com, the preeminent online African-American men's magazine. Like us on Facebook under Regal Media Group. Follow us on Twitter at Regal Media. And remember, men, step up to the throne and reclaim your royalty.